Most people don't realize this, but your retirement can blow up faster than you think if you make just a few critical mistakes. In this video, I'll show you some of the landmines that are out there that completely blow up a retirement so that you don't fall into the same trap. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
For those of you new to the channel, hi, my name is Jeff. I'm a CPA turned author turned public speaker, and I started this channel in 2020 really at the request of my daughter. She saw me helping family members with their finances, giving them advice, and she said, "Dad, if you can help them, can't you help others as well?" And with that, the channel was born. Today, we have over 370,000 subscribers, over 60 million views, and we would love it if you became part of our YouTube family. So just click subscribe and turn on notifications, and you'll be alerted the next time I post a video. I post 2 or 3 times a week. All right, let's get into it. Point number 1, the most common landmine, failing to change your money habits. A good example is picking up the check all of the time. When you are the patriarch or the matriarch of the family, you sort of expect that you're going to pay for everything, basically when it comes to your kids and their friends and everybody in that orbit. But the reality is, as you move into retirement, that specific requirement becomes less and less. And eventually, your kids are on their own, they're making a great income, and maybe they can pick up the check once in a while. Along those same lines, when you went on vacation, you paid for all of the flights, all of the meals, all of the hotel rooms for everybody, and all of the entertainment while you were on vacation. Today, that's not necessarily a requirement, particularly when people are coming in with their spouses and with your grandkids. Adding additional family members can double or even triple the price of a vacation, and it shouldn't be on you to pay for everybody if it's not something that you can easily afford. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times where it makes sense for the head of the family to pay for everything. For example, my grandmother, for her 80th birthday, took all of us on a cruise, and it was her kids, their spouses, and I think there were 1 or 2 grandkids in the mix as well. It would have cost a lot of money, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and she was happy to do it. But it wasn't a requirement. It was something that nobody expected her to do. She just did it because she wanted to give to the family. But when it becomes an expectation, even later on in life, that the head of the family is going to pay for everything all of the time, that's when things get really expensive really quickly. Another issue is paying for college for grandkids. Now, if you were the type of person who paid for your kids' college, it was something that you probably planned for and saved meticulously for over the course of 18 plus years. But with the kids grown and in their own lives, there isn't really a requirement most of the time for you to do the same thing for their kids, although a lot of grandparents want to help. And that's noble, and if you can do it, great. But it shouldn't be a requirement, and it can be very expensive because if you're paying for college for one grandkid, well, you'll probably have to pay for college for multiple grandkids. A lot of grandparents will help with something like a 529 college plan and make small contributions here and there, but it's a small contribution. It isn't a large contribution most of the time. Now, how do you stop if you're caught in a rut and you're paying for everything all of the time? Well, step 1 is to stop offering, because the expectation that you're going to pay for everything, as I said, might be in your mind, but not in theirs. But they might even feel like you're offended if you don't get to pay. And so in that instance, if you don't offer and somebody picks up the bill, smile, say thank you, and then move on. Don't get me wrong, giving feels good, but you shouldn't do it at the expense of your freedom. Learn to say we're on a fixed income now, and while we can afford to pay for this, we can't afford to pay for everything all of the time like we used to because we're not working anymore. And this rule, by the way, doesn't apply if someone is in dire need and they need your help. Of course, if you can help, then in that instance, you might want to consider it. I'm talking about just everyday spending all of the time. Point 2, ignoring the fact that you will probably need some form of long-term care as you get older. The fact is, 70% of people who go into retirement eventually need some form of long-term care, 7 out of 10. Yet only 15% of the people out there have long-term care insurance. So you can see that there's a bit of a disconnect between what's going to happen and the preparation for that event. Now, if long-term care insurance isn't a possibility for you, or you have some reason why you don't want long-term care insurance, and people do, there are other ways to finance it. The first is through savings, of course, and people will often take their savings and set it aside for long-term care. Is it a perfect match? Well, I think it depends on how much money you have in your savings and investments, of course, but it's better than nothing. The second option is using family members and having them help you out. Now, the problem with that is that it becomes a burden on someone else, and they may be willing to do it, but oftentimes they're not happy to do it. And sometimes they may be unwilling to do it, and you will be at the most vulnerable point in your life when you're asking for their help and they're saying no, if they say no. Another option is Medicaid. Medicaid is something that is for people of reasonably low income, and you have to show that you can't afford the long-term care, and only then will Medicaid pay for part of your long-term care costs. Now, in order to reduce the possibility that you're going to need long-term care, because 70% of people eventually do need long-term care, taking better care of yourself is of paramount importance. And as people age, they tend to take less care of themselves, at least when it comes to the holistic stuff like exercise and eating right. And I will say that the best long-term care plan starts long before long-term care is needed. People who think about their long-term care a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades out in some cases do far better under most circumstances than people who figure it out when they need long-term care. The next point is disagreeing with your partner about retirement goals. And this happens all of the time. The reason isn't because people have different wants and needs, but you have one person who specialized in the money the entire marriage and the entire working years, and the other that specialized in running the family or running the house or doing other things. And so you have one very practical person, and one person who is more focused on big picture stuff. So what happens? You have one partner that says, no, we're not doing it this way because it's going to hurt us, and the other that won't take no for an answer, and partner number one eventually gets exhausted and just gives in. And then all of a sudden something happens and they wish they had better insight into their finances. And the whole keep up with the Joneses aspect of the working years does play out if you take that into retirement. And it plays out pretty clearly if you move into a retirement community that's a lifestyle community, like a golf community or a tennis community. And people spend a lot of their time at the club doing things that cost money. And what happens if this isn't dealt with? Well, it manifests into real issues, physical issues, stress, fatigue, worse. And so this is something that you and your partner should get on the same page with. The next point, ignoring taxes in retirement. Retirement is one of life's biggest tax event, yet many people don't realize this because they spent the last 30 or 40 years arranging their lives to be as tax-friendly as possible. The mortgage, the 401k contributions that were deductible from income, on and on the list goes. And so finally, at the end of all of that, a lot of people don't realize that that type of thinking continues because a lot of those assets are now being unwound and you need to do it in the most tax-efficient way. The order in which you withdraw matters. Your Roth, your IRA, your traditional trading and savings account. All of that matters because you need to balance the money that you have coming out with the taxes that you pay with the money that you have coming out. And then you need to think about things like required minimum distributions, capital gains, Social Security, and the tax implications of all of those, and the interplay of all of those with the other type of investment accounts that you have that you're living off of. And with all of that, you still need to plan your conversions because you'll be faced with required minimum distributions. And most people can't do this in their head, by the way. If you need help with this, a good financial planner is the way to go. If you don't want to pay 1% or approximately 1% of the value of your assets to a financial planner, get good financial planning software. I personally use BOLDIN. BOLDIN is the affiliate that we represent on this channel. It's wonderful, and it runs about $12 a month. If you're interested, use our affiliate link, go.boldin.com/holyschmidt, and you can get 2 weeks free of their full feature software. After that, it's about $12 a month paid annually. The next big risk area is financing big purchases on your credit card, unexpected charges, often come up, and people, if they don't have the money, will put those on their credit card. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not an evangelist that says you can never use your credit card if there's an emergency. However, it is a credit card, and interest rates are 18, 19, 20, 21%, even more in many cases. And because of this, there are 5 words that are supremely important in retirement. You need an emergency fund. Without one, credit cards become the fallback, and that can be a trap. High interest rates can eat your retirement income alive. The average debt payment for people who have debt in retirement is 40% of their income. 40%. That means that you have 60% for everything else. That's a big slice of your retirement living pie. It feels like you have $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month or $100 a month, but you only have $60 a month or $600 a month or $6,000 a month. Just keep adding zeros where appropriate. So what do people do to fix this problem? If they don't have an emergency fund and they have high interest rate credit cards, well, sometimes they'll take out a home equity line of credit, which is a much more sensible rate. But the problem with a HELOC, as they're called, is that oftentimes they're so low compared to what they were paying before that people just don't pay them off. And then the next emergency happens and they use it again. You get the point. So the bottom line here is avoid carrying a balance if you can help it. Cash is your friend that gives you flexibility. It allows you to enjoy your retirement lifestyle in a way that you've earned. Next, underestimating your financial needs in retirement. And I will tell you, this is a biggie for people of all income levels, but it hits people with higher income and higher savings levels more because they feel like they've done well. They put the money away that they need to put away, particularly if they've lived a big lifestyle, it affects them more. And so they go into retirement and they look at their savings and investment accounts and they see a lot of zeros and they think, I can do whatever I want to do because I've done the right thing. The problem here is that almost universally, people who go into retirement thinking that they have a lot of money underestimate their longevity and underestimate how much they're going to spend because they can't spend. Most of the time, they can't spend what they were spending before, even if they've done a terrific job saving. Add to that the silent killer of inflation. Inflation doesn't jump out at you as an issue unless you have a big inflation year like we had in 2022, around the 2022-2023 area, where we had an 8% plus year in inflation. But if inflation is running 2 or 3%, well, people don't understand that that stacks on each 2 or 3%. And over the course of 3 years, that's 10% or more in some cases. People usually underestimate healthcare costs, the cost of the healthcare insurance, Medicare, Medicare supplements, Medigap policies, Medicare Advantage policies, and they also underestimate their copay, what they're going to have to pay out of pocket. Plus, there are things that just aren't covered and you have to pay for yourself. People rarely budget for that. Travel and family support often exceed early projections. It's not until people get calibrated in retirement and they really understand what the needs in these areas are, because before you were just paying for that with cash flow up to your spending limit and the rest was going into an investment account of some sort. So point 1, start with realistic expenses, not big dreams. Don't start with your biggest dream, pay for it, and then look at your account afterwards. Work it the opposite way. The next point, falling for a financial scam. Now, we talk about financial scams a lot on this channel. In fact, one of our most popular videos was from about a month ago talking about a Charles Schwab financial scam. It has hundreds of thousands of views, but the financial scammers out there are getting smarter and smarter. I received one the other day, and I wouldn't say that I almost fell for it, but I opened it. It was a document signing company of a similar name, and I was waiting for a document to sign, a digital document to sign. Now, when I started reading the email, there were some spelling mistakes, even in the name of the company, so I realized it was a scam, but it's easy when you're expecting something to come, and it suddenly appears. And by the way, how do scammers get you? Most of the time, it's you're just not paying attention. Sometimes, if you are paying attention, they use fear, or they use greed, or they use urgency. Something has to be done now, because if you don't take care of it right now, all sorts of bad things will happen, or the opportunity that you're supposed to get will be taken away. Fear and greed. And how does it happen? Well, fake Social Security, phone calls and texts, fake IRS, phone calls and texts. The list goes on, but there are things that are pretty obvious in hindsight, and they usually come in the form of a phone call or a text, occasionally an email. Too good to be true investment offers trap people, because if they have a toehold on your belief that they might be actually legitimate, and that's all they need is a toehold, they can exploit it. And they move very quickly, and all of a sudden you're trying to stay ahead of it so that you don't lose the opportunity, only to learn later, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars later in some cases, that there was no opportunity at all. If someone's rushing you, it's probably a scam, definitely a red flag. And very importantly, stay skeptical, because oftentimes you'll get an email from a friend who says something like, "Hey, Jeff, I just saw this. I'm doing it myself. I think you should check it out too." And because it comes from your friend's email, you think it's legitimate, only to find out about an hour later that somebody hacked into their email and sent out an email to their entire address book, and you were on the address book. Now, how do you protect yourself on autopilot? Well, there's no one way to get 100% protection. Awareness helps a lot. One way that gets you closer is freezing your credit report, because if you freeze your credit report and someone is seeking credit on you, i.e. someone who's got your information and they're trying to apply for a loan or a credit card in your name, they can't access your credit report and extend you credit unless they're willing to do it without a credit report, which happens, but it's rare. And one last point, then we'll move on. No one who's legitimate ever needs the PIN to your account if they're calling you. Sometimes you will call the bank or a service provider and it'll ask you to verify something, but you're the one making the outbound call. It's not an inbound call to you. The next landmine is eating out too often. Now, people are social creatures. They enjoy eating out because they like the ability to go out and either talk to other people that they're eating with or just people watch if they're eating by themselves. Completely legitimate, particularly if you are alone in retirement and you don't have anybody else to talk to. But when it becomes more than just a regular occurrence, when it becomes something that impacts your income or your savings, and often your health, because people don't usually go to vegetarian restaurants when they eat out, then there's a red flag here that needs to be paid attention to. Restaurant prices typically increase faster than inflation. So if you're saying, well, I'm saving money by eating out because grocery prices have gone up, well, restaurant prices use groceries to basically build their product, which is meals, and so their prices have to go up as well. So my recommendation here to you isn't to not eat out, because people need to do it socially, but save it for connection, not for habit. Cooking at home gives you control, savings, and better nutrition in most cases. And on this last point, I'll end with this. A $40 lunch habit once or twice a week is thousands of dollars a year over the course of a year. If you like this video, check out that video, one tiny mistake that wiped out an entire life savings. Also, don't forget to check out our affiliate BOLDIN at go.boldin.com/holyschmidt to get 2 weeks free. After that, it's $12 a month paid annually. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.